It was noisy in the kingdom that morning. The crown prince of the dynasty committed a terrible sin and went against moral norms. In the hands of someone like him, the kingdom should instantly fall. If his father were alive, he would have brought him to the grave. In the chambers, the crown prince of the kingdom of Wu Yu was sitting on his bed, holding his head. It seemed to him that he was still asleep, and his head hurt a lot. He remembers that tomorrow is his coronation, but he just didn't fall asleep for long. On the bed opposite him sat a frightened concubine, who was his father's favorite. Yu did not understand at all how she ended up in his bed on the eve of his coronation. While the guy was thinking, he did not notice the tub of water brought by the servant. When the icy water doused the whole body, the voice of the mistress of the harem, Concubine's eye thundered again. Obviously, this is not a dream. The bed on which Yu woke up was decorated with images of phoenixes, so it wasn't his. He woke up in the Zi palace, where the beloved concubines of the previous emperor alive. There were a lot of officials around, which also defied explanations. They were not allowed to enter these rooms. Yu and concubine Ming were dragged away to the reception hall of the Zi palace, where Zai herself sat on the throne. The people gathered around whispered about what a libertine the prince was and how difficult it was to forgive. Zai ordered the guards to throw out Min's concubine, who knows no shame, and execute her. Min screamed that she wasn't at all to blame and didn't understand what had happened because she hadn't done anything. Zai did not pay attention to this, continuing to talk about the situation. She reproached Yu that his father did not have time to die, as the prince slept with one of his wives. Such a crime deserves a high penalty. The guy understood that he could not sleep with a concubine. He did not even know her name. Besides, apparently he was poisoned. He could not move his body at all. None of those present would like to challenge the decision to punish Yu. Even Prince Rong considered the guy not worthy of an emperor if he practiced martial arts all day and was aggressive. Unfortunately, no one took into account that if it wasn't for the prince, the kingdom would have been swallowed up long ago. Commander-in-Chief Wu also joined the discussion with his point of view. According to him, Prince Yu's mother was a simple girl of easy virtue, and if the emperor had not favored her, then Yu himself would never have received the title of crown prince. Yu immediately realized who and why was in the reception hall. He once beat Prince Rong with a whip for stealing girls, and the son of Commander-in-Chief Wu was executed by Yu for crimes. It looks like Concubine Fei gathered everyone who hates Yu, but they wouldn't poison him. Someone else should be behind her. After all, they were hurting the crown prince. It turns out that even a celestial has come. A celestial sent down by heaven to protect the kingdom, who does not interfere in worldly affairs, only protects all the living, expels evil spirits. Even he was there at that moment. People didn't stop whispering about different things and coming up with gossip on the go. How did they disturb even the celestial whom the emperor worshipped? He must be 100 years old, but he looks young, and no one knows about his immortal techniques. When the celestial Hayashin of the Wu kingdom entered the halls, everyone immediately fell to their knees, bowing their heads to the floor. Yu also greets the celestial and asks to be fair to him. This man inspires awe, and his father also respected him very much. Yu is confident in this man and knows that he will restore justice. Hayashin did not even look at him. He just said that he was asking to punish the criminal with the deprivation of his title, a ban on practicing arts and exile to the army. In his opinion, a self-willed person who does not respect laws and norms cannot rule the country, and Wu Yu has crossed the boundaries of what is permissible. Just like that, without question, they just got rid of the crown prince. No one in the kingdom could restrain Yu except the celestial. It looks like it was all a conspiracy, and he was the one behind the concubine Fei. As the last words in his defense, Yu replied to them that he had nothing to be ashamed of. The celestial wants to get rid of him, but he can't answer anything. The one who was supposed to represent the will of heaven turned out to be a scoundrel. Of course, such a statement angered and surprised everyone. No one dared to say such a thing in front of a celestial. Hayashin himself concluded that if Yu thinks so, then he can give him a powder that will cut his spiritual channels. The guards grabbed Yu by the shoulders, forcing him to kneel down and poured a greenish powder into his mouth, from which the guy immediately coughed. Wu Yu is the strongest man in the world, but he couldn't defeat the celestial. It's outrageous, and Yu knows that if he is given another life, all 10 years of cultivation had gone down the drain, and now he would never calm down. At the city gate, a young girl in a blue dress, Wu Yu's older sister, Princess Wu Yu, was running to the carriage with a cage. The guy shouted to her at the last, grabbing her hand, that it wasn't his fault and that heaven had punished him. This was not enough to calm the young heart, but at least Yu's conscience was clear, even though this is such a world and it is not worth grieving. He promised her that in the next life he would be her little brother again when their hands parted. 4 hours later, the wagon was still moving along the mountain road in the intense cold. Yu almost completely froze to death. He had been in his undergarments since the palace. Yu, on his last breath, remembered the celestial Hayashin and Concubine Zai. If the day comes when he is reborn again, they will pay in full. Hearing the crash, one of the guards asked to report to the commander that Wu Yu had died. The guards looked at the guy, checking if he was dead for sure, and the next minute they threw the corpse far away from the cliff. His body pendant froze to his chest, and the skin began to wrap around him as if alive. As soon as the pendant was completely absorbed by Yu's skin, he woke up in an empty and dark space, seeing a heavenly pillar in front of him. It was a level 1 technique, an immortal body, but Yu still didn't understand what was going on. A powerful spirit rose above him, shouting to him that he was a great sage, equal to heaven, from the heavenly palace and a heavenly Buddha. Yu was destined to gain his knowledge, go against the heavens and destroy the earth. The concubine sank to the floor thanking the celestial for his help, and today, expelling the prince is of course a trivial matter for a cultivator. Starting tomorrow, Concubine Zai will have to obey the celestial and allow Yuan Hao to ascend the throne. Yuan Hao has Hayashin blood, although he has no aptitude for martial arts. He cannot allow his life to be gray and dull. Yu is quite cunning. Even though they sent him to the army, he may well return. Hayashin had instructed Wan Qin to kill Yu in advance. He assured Concubine Zai that there was nothing to worry about. He is definitely already dead and will not create problems. After saying that Wan Qin took up the case, you can be calm. Yu woke up there in the cliff among the rocks. He did not die and the powder no longer worked. Yu immediately realized that he had been reborn completely, but now he had lost his 5th heaven martial arts. Strong body, muscles, hard bones, inner strength and blood renewal. Now everything he worked on has been destroyed. It was also interesting what kind of dream and an iron wand it was. Yu remembers that at the age of 5, when his mother died, he was so lonely, but every evening an old man came to his window and told stories. He wanted to see him, but as soon as the boy came out, the old man disappeared. A year later, one evening, he dropped the piece of iron and asked you to carry it with him. The piece of iron is gone now. Is that old man really the great sage from the dream? In any case, it was impossible to think much. It was necessary to try to master the immortal body of the Vajra. The immortal body is the initial level of the first layer of the hardened flesh of the Vajra. Kai leaves the Hugai, passes through the cloud gate and descends into the middle house. 4 days later, you reach the first heaven of martial arts, and the Vajra granted by heaven strengthened his body. Now his strength is equal to the power of 3 martial arts. This is 3 times more than he had in the first heaven last time. His body has become strong, and he is now much stronger. This technique is simply incredible. Then there is nothing to wait for. He will cultivate the second layer of muscles, Vajra muscles. After 7 days, he had already reached the second level of Vajra muscles. The immortal Vajra body is really powerful. Yu's strength is also 5 times higher than usual in the second heaven. Not bad for him. Now his power is equal to 10 warhorses. He was almost approaching the level he had in the 5th heaven. Suddenly there was a strange smell and Yu turned around. A huge blue demon snake jumped out right at him, which immediately turned into a girl. It was the disciple of the celestial, Wan King. She defended the country, and as a result, the heavenly dweller warmed a snake on his chest. It is not surprising that more than 1,000 people have disappeared in the kingdom of Wu in 10 years. King noticed that the guy is tenacious, and if the master had not instructed her to bring his body as proof, she would have thought that Yu was dead. Yu doubted that King would be able to kill him, before that he was the strongest in the kingdom, and the girl was 1 heaven behind him and therefore was afraid to join the fight. Now, he has been deprived of cultivation, and he is simply unable to do anything to her. She looks at him from a high place and is now sure that she will devour his body and give his head to the celestial master, but Yu hoped for this. As soon as she rushes to attack, he throws his fist forward and hits her stomach. The demon flies off in the other direction, not understanding where the guy got such power if all his spiritual channels were cut off. Taking into account the martial art of the 4th heaven and the snake demon, she was second only to Yu in the Wu kingdom. He can't let her catch her breath. He needs to kill her while she hesitates. Yu hit the girl in the stomach again and was about to deliver a control blow, but King transformed into a snake thinking that this way she could defeat Yu, who had strength. The guy, grabbing a stone, deftly jumped on the snake, hitting the demon's head with a stone. She urgently needed to think of something to save herself. Yu would not give up and killed King eventually, so she decided to deceive him. She shouted that if he didn't kill her, she would tell him the secret of his father's death. It only remained to play on Yu's feelings. His father was killed by Master in Concubine's eye. This information explained the unexpected death of Yu's father 6 months later due to an unknown illness, which had nowhere to come from. In order to kill him unnoticed, the master spent a bunch of pills. Concubine's eye herself added them to his food. King had the only way to survive, to anger Yu. Everything turned out exactly like this. Yu was distracted by anger, considering Concubine's eye and Celestial Hayashin to be scum, and King at this time twisted and threw the guy off her back. Yu screamed and flew into the abyss. For the king, this situation was too dangerous, but the cliff next to the river significantly simplified the situation. Having fallen from such a height into the river of azure waves, an ordinary person dies. There is no corpse, but she completed the task. He woke up again, but not on the ground, but in a bed in a warm room. He was met by an old acquaintance who came to his window as a child. You recognized him by his voice and was sure that they had met 10 years ago. But the old man said that he had been living in these mountains for more than 80 years and had never left them, so they simply could not be acquainted. Yu is currently at the Gate of the Immortals. The Gate of the Immortals is a place where those who seek immortality study. Yu himself had heard that cultivators usually do not interfere in human affairs, so few people know about them. The guy sincerely thanked the old man for saving his life. He introduced himself and asked the old man's name. The old man called himself Sun Wudao, but it wasn't him who slept Yu. It was the Supreme Preceptor who ordered Yu to work here. Yu really wanted to go out to look around, but Wudao asked him to drink a healing potion first. In the Gates of the Immortals, even a decoction of ginseng is not so simple. When the old man took Yu outside, he was surprised to see an island floating in the sky, which was called the Heavenly Sword Sect. It was incredible that such places really exist on Earth. There are many arts associated with the sword, so the sect is called the Heavenly Sword. The Gates of the Immortals are located among the Azure Mountains towering over several states. There are many students here, so this place is comparable to a small country. Wudao gave the guy a clean set of clothes and asked him to walk up the mountain so that he could tell more about the sect. The Supreme Mentor is the strongest in their sect, the legendary Immortal Celestial. He is followed by the elders, then the main disciples and external disciples. There is a huge gap between the main and external students. There are hundreds of times more external students than the main ones. However, there are especially many servants there. They take care of nutrition and cleanliness, feed heavenly animals, plant heavenly herbs, clean palaces. That's their job. There are hundreds of servants for the outer disciples and 10 servants for the main ones, so they are not allowed to leave this place. Only if you don't reach the 6th level of the mortal body before the age of 15. Having comprehended the martial arts of the 6th heaven, a person will have the opportunity to pass the exam to become a disciple. Then you can stop being a servant and start cultivating. Wudao then lacked just a little bit and it greatly upset him. He was already 16 in 2 months, and if it wasn't for the powder, he would have reached the 6th heaven in a few days. It was annoying. Grandpa looked at him, shaking his finger. You should remember, the main rule of a servant is not to displease a celestial, and this applies even to external disciples, otherwise they can simply kill you. A crane with a rider flew in the sky and Wudao bowed Yu's head, explaining that it was the celestial Su Yanli, the mistress of the local Yanli Peak. She is the personal disciple of the Supreme Mentor, which makes her superior to the main disciples. It's a good thing she didn't notice Yu's lowered gaze. He could have been killed for that. The path of immortals is very dangerous. The next servant's exam will be held within 2 months. Yu thought hard about it. They came to the Garden of Heavenly Beasts. The task for this day is to look after them. They were met by the head of the servants, Zhao Chuan. The guy who was picked up by the Supreme Mentor must be strong if he didn't die in the river. We need to find out more about the new guy, and the manager would really like to do this. Zhao asked him to come over and hold out his hand to get acquainted. But Grandpa immediately understood what was what and said that this could not be done. The guy is still very weak. Besides, Zhao has the 4th level of the mortal body. Yu is not his rival. The manager, spitting some kind of insult, left warning that if he shirked from work, he would pay. Mr. Zhao, there was nothing to worry about anyway. If something like this happens, then old man Wudao will do everything for him. Today, Mrs. Su will be visited by several celestials, so it is necessary to look after their cranes. If something goes wrong, then everyone will pay with their lives. A flock of cranes with riders dressed in white appeared in the sky. Wudao again warned Yu that he should not look at the celestials. All of them, having descended to the ground, passed on. Yu would also be among them if it wasn't for the powder. Already in the evening, the main disciple of Sidu Jin screamed when he saw his crane drowned in the water, and already dead. He angrily asked who was feeding his crane, and immediately the manager Zhao Chuan, who appeared from a distance, pointed his finger at Yu, saying that he was doing it. It was profitable for the manager. He specifically made sure that the new Yu got into trouble as soon as possible. Sidhu, not intending to further understand the situation, pulled out his whip, dealing a strong blow to the incomprehensible Yu. He believed that some worthless servant had dared to harm his bird, and he didn't care who was accused. Yu Dao came to the defense of the guy, standing next to him and blocking him with himself. He admitted that he fed the crane. Yu knew that Zhao Chuan wanted to frame him. He can't endanger Grandpa. He grabbed him by the shoulder and stepped forward, taking the last blow on himself. Yu was thrown far into the thicket, and the others decided that he was dead and left. Yu Dao hurried to the guy to help him up. Yu definitely decided that in these 2 months he would get into the sect and one day repay them for this day, and Chuan for setting him up. Even though Wu Dao insisted that the boy not think about fighting the immortals, because Yu is only an ordinary person, even if he hates them. Grandpa's son took care of Yu for no particular reason. He just thought that this was his share. He has endured this all his life, but Yu is still very young. Therefore, the old man wants the fate of the guy to be better than him. He has endured humiliation all his life. Yu stood up apologizing. He can't promise him that. Since he has the immortal body of Vajra, he will try to enter the sect and take revenge. 10 days later, he was only a short distance away from the 3rd level of the immortal Vajra body, the bones of golden fire. Something cracked in the bushes and Yu realized that he was so carried away with cultivation, forgetting about checking weapons. The manager Zhao Chuan came out into the clearing with 4 more servants. Sun Wudao said that the boy was weak, but he survived the lash. Something didn't add up here. The manager demanded to give him a pill or a book that Yu uses, but the guy didn't have anything like that, and despite the threat of death, he told the truth. He has nothing to give to the manager. If this manager has the 4th level of a docile body, then his strength is equal to 20 horses, which is twice as much as Yu himself now. You'll have to work hard to defeat this man. One of the servants offered to deal with Yu himself first, and then make him talk, because he is too stubborn. One of the servants who came with the manager came forward, intending to attack the guy and send him to heaven with one blow. This man's strength was full of flaws, and he imagined himself to be God knows what. It is suitable for use and training. The servant is already close and ready to hit you with his fist, but the guy just throws his leg forward, throwing the opponent away from him. Manager Zhao Chuan looks at his henchman, who is now lying on the ground covered in blood, and does not understand how this puppy Yu could achieve such strength. He gave the order to attack him at the same time, all together remaining on the sidelines, and all those who came rushed forward obeying. He urged them to avenge old Ma and did not believe that he could defeat the 4 alone. Yu did not start first, and therefore will not restrain himself and then listen to complaints, too. He quickly dealt with the 2 servants. One of them fell to the ground with a broken face. The second Yu himself pressed his head into the ground, threatening to damage it altogether. The 3rd striker went to the knockout with an accurate kick to the face. Yu has honed techniques and a strong body. He doesn't seem like an ordinary person. It looks like the manager will have to fight in full force. Vadra's immortal body is so strong that ordinary attacks do no harm. Easy revenge is a great feeling. Yu is strong, but whether he can handle the sword is another question. The manager pulled the blade out of the scabbard and now went at the guy, forcing him to accept his death humbly. Zhao Chuan, the caretaker of the Heavenly Beast Garden, was not so simple. Already beaten servants shouted requests to expose or beat the guy at the break. Zhao Chuan is already at the stage of inner resilience. His whole body is as if forged from iron, and he has even breathing. It must be difficult with him. The recovered servants were going to throw that idiot old man Yu Dao off the cliff tomorrow. He would have been great food for vultures. He had lived too long in the world and hurt their eyes. The fact that these bastards want to kill Grandpa Wu Dao, which means that now he is fighting for life and death. Only by winning will he be able to save himself and Grandpa Wu Dao. However, even the servants here possess martial arts of the middle rank of the national treasure. Yu tried to hide from the blows or defend himself while attacking himself, but one swing of the manager's sword reached him. The guy leaned against a tree, pressing a deep wound on his chest with his hand. It was a good thing that he had already obtained the golden bones at the 3rd level of the immortal Vajra body. Only the flame is missing, otherwise he would already be dead. The servants surrounded him along with the manager. They shouted for their master to kill Yu as soon as possible. When Zhao Chuan's sword was about to descend on Yu's head, he wrapped his hands around the blades, stopping him. The guy accumulated strength in his hand and killed the head of the water dragon. If not for the breakthrough, the sword would have broken his arm. The servants were screaming that since Wu Yu had killed Mr. Zhao, according to the laws of the sect, he was sentenced to death. You would be amazed, weren't they just discussing how they would kill him and feed Grandpa to the vultures? Wu Yu has killed only two types of people all his life, angry students and dogs filled with anger. These servants fit both options, so he killed them all with a sword. Yu thanked the great sage who gave him another chance. The guy decided to hide for a while the sword that he took from the manager. When he gets into the sexta, he will be able to use it. The celestial Su Yanli was standing behind the tree, who witnessed everything that happened. It was also not clear to her what Yu got if he was able to kill the manager. Thanks to the regeneration of the immortal body, most of Yu's injuries will heal by the next morning. But it's better not to show the wounds on Grandpa's hands, otherwise he will worry, so Yu wrapped them with bandages. He was gone for a long time, probably Grandpa is already asleep. Yu returned to the house where he lived. He saw a note on the table, where his grandfather asked him to drink a decoction of ginseng again, so the guy would recover faster and recover. Yu promised himself that he would pass the exam and fulfill his grandfather's dream. When he gets into the sect, then everyone who bullied him will pay. 2 days later, in the celestial palace of the Celestials, Su Yanli stood in front of her mentor telling him about what had happened. He asked her what she wanted to do with it. Su Yanli remembered, as they say, it's not his fault that he was envied. Her mentor had taught her that the way of the immortals was the way of thieves. Therefore, she wants to take the treasure that Wu Yu got for himself. The supreme mentor of the Heavenly Sword sect, Feng Zhui, listened attentively to his disciple. He did not know why. If his main teaching is the main teaching of the Azure Mountains, then the disciple wants to covet the treasure of the servants. He is like her teacher says, in this life she will be able to reach his level. Yanli was forced to agree with the mentor. She'd better focus on cultivation. Feng Zhui's disciple should cultivate his teachings. The path of the immortals is cruel and full of dangers, but offending the weak by abusing their strength does not belong to the teaching. The servant obviously has the makings of a celestial, since he is from their peak, then taking care of him is a sound thing. He was going to go out for a walk, but Grandpa asked him to stay in the room and rest. Zhao Chuan and the others were attacked by an evil demon just in the mountains. Yu assured his grandfather that he would be near the Heavenly Beast Garden and would not go far. He asked him to call him when the work began. Grandfather had no one, and he treated Yu as a son. He should make the old man proud of him. The fourth level of the immortal Vajra body is the 5 gods of the 5 organs. Yu only needs to separate the gods of red, purple, yellow, white, and black gold. Before creating a connection, it is necessary to sever all 5 organs, even though it is terribly painful. The guy only has one chance in front of the gates of the immortals, and he can't miss it. The stage of the tempered mortal body, the 5th level of the 5 gods of the 5 organs, has finally been reached. It turns out that the strength of the 4th level of the perfect body stage is equal to the strength of 130 horses, stronger than the normal 6th level of a hardened body. Last day as a servant. You will definitely get into the sect tomorrow. Grandpa came to the guy inviting him to work and he immediately responded. In the garden at work, Grandpa strenuously asked you to try not to do anything, just to do his job and know his place. Zhao Chuan didn't follow this and paid with his life, so you should be smarter. Yu, on the other hand, was carefree and only chatted about tomorrow's entrance exam, which Grandpa must definitely come and see. Cranes with familiar riders appeared in the sky. Grandpa asked you to hide, but it was too late and it was only necessary to accept the consequences. The guy had to figure out how to escape from them while Grandpa was distracting. It was the same celestial who attacked you because of Zhao Chuan. The 3 celestials swooped down and descended to the ground. One of them shushed Sidhu Jin that it was the servant who killed the crane. Sidhu, of course, did not fight with him in full force, but he could not even think that he would survive. Obviously, he was lucky, although Yu is no weaker than Sidhu Jin. But it's better for him to keep quiet now. Grandpa greeted the celestial properly, rejoicing that you managed to bend over and quickly adapted. Grandfather also expressed gratitude for the fact that the servant survived from the mercy shown. There was an external disciple standing next to Sidhu, who continually goaded the celestial by saying that he could not even kill a servant. If her crane was offended, then the culprit would be severely punished. Sidhu decided that his sister was right and the only decent punishment for the crane's death was eating shit. Grandpa immediately came forward saying that since he had brought Yu, he would eat it himself. But Yu was also not going to be silent. He asked his grandfather not to pay attention and came forward determined. The servant dared not follow the order of the celestial because even a servant should not deserve such humiliation. Yu didn't want to complicate things, but he won't stand aside either. The rest of the servants whispered that it was definitely the end of Yu now, even if Zhao Chuan had framed him. Sidhu swung his whip, promising that he would now send you to the next world. But he was prevented by hitting him hard in the face. Su Yanli was standing nearby. Sidhu was surprised at what she was doing here, but there was nothing surprising for her. This is Yanli Peak. She lives here the same as you, and there shouldn't be any more Sidhu and the other 3 here. They should be executed. Sidhu had already risen to his feet and mockingly reminded the girl that his younger brother, Sidhu Minglan, had reached the peak of a hardened body already and much better than Su Yanli was at the same age. It is said that the great immortal is already ready to take him as a disciple. In the future, his position will be much higher than Su's. They just warned her not daring to scare her and jumped on their cranes and flew into the sky. Yu thanked the lady for her help, and she asked him not to take it into his head and took off. At the age of 13, reached the peak of martial arts. This Minlan must be amazing. You only reached the 5th heaven at 15. Grandpa breathed a sigh of relief. He already thought that they would not live to see the exam tomorrow. The way to the exam place is not close at all, and Grandpa's legs are not the same anymore. He offered to move out tonight, but you reassured him that tomorrow he would drag him on himself. If you wants to start a new life, then this is the last opportunity. He must win. The exam was held at the peak of the proclamation. The participant must climb to the top of this peak to participate in the competition. He left Grandpa in a place where he could see everything. Grandpa sincerely thanked you. From there, he will be able to see the rise of geniuses to heaven. If Grandpa wants to, then you will take him back later. You will definitely get into the sect today. You stopped at the admission table for the first test. Introducing himself as a servant from Yanli Peak Wu Yu and confirming his 6th level of the hardened body stage, he passed. The first test was the 100 test. It was necessary to hold the reins of 100 horses with his bare hands, and you quickly and simply coped with this task and passed. He was given a talisman of red fire. If Yu's life is in danger or he wants to get out of the test, then he will have to break it, and the disciple will come to salvation. Now he must go to the very beginning of the competition for the first test on the path of the immortals and prepare for the rest of the tests. After this gate of life passing in the hands of heaven, they say that this time there are 300 participants. You need to be on the alert. At the top of the mountain, the arena of the elevation, Grandfather was sitting together with another servant. The path of the immortals is about to begin, and Wu Yu has not returned yet. It bothered him a lot. At the same time, Elder Muji, who was sitting at the top with Su Yanli, was wondering if there was someone standing at her peak this time. She replied that it was only Wu Yu, and if the elder wanted to find out, then he should carefully observe the exam. Also, Sita and his retinue flew to see the exam. His sister didn't understand what was interesting about a bunch of servants getting the right to join a sect if it was a waste of time. But they still had nothing to do. It is worth looking at how they will fight with hunted animals. Among the participants there were 3 at the 7th level of the hardened body stage, and they are stronger than them by a level. Even if the 7th level is the level of Brother Satito. Everyone was already walking along the path of the immortals talking. Everyone knew about the strongest participants of this exam. The first was Zhao Danlong, the 7th level of the hardened body, which is equal to the strength of 200 horses. He is only 14. But he is already a master of the sword. The second was the big guy Juju, the 7th level of the hardened body. It was said that he raised a huge tiger in the mountains, good at 8 styles of killing demons and ghostly snake steps. And the last one is that 12-year-old girl King Man about whom it was said that the shadow of her sword, the mountains of loneliness, and her steps are very strong. The 7th level at the age of 12 was a very strong indicator for you, and he understood that she was very strong. While they were talking, they came to the exit of the tunnel. The big door of the glee was waiting for them by the stewards and students. Participants on the path of immortality face 3 challenges. Each one will consist of strong beasts that are about to turn into demons. Animals are very dangerous. If the participant's life is in danger, then you need to show the red fire talisman, and they will be saved. Among the 300 participants, only 100 will be able to take part in the battle in the arena of elevation, so it's better for them to take good seats. It is also worth remembering, only after passing the exam, they will be able to step on the path of immortality and kill demons. The time has come, and on the path of immortality they must remember one word: to kill. The doors flew open and everyone rushed forward, deciding that they would kill anyone who got in their way. You did not yet know how strong the enemies were here, so he thought it would be too rash to rush headlong. Ahead, people were shouting about a red-horned snake, which was also poisonous. Everyone ran to attack, and only some did not fall into her mouth, immediately dying. As expected by you, this demon was quite large. He can't waste too much energy here. He finished off the last one without much effort, intending to move on. The previously mentioned Zhao Danlong got in Yu's way. He said it wasn't bad, but he would still be the first. The condensed pill will also go to him. Zhao Danlong had already run ahead. The first to pass the test is awarded with a pill, and if Grandpa Song sees that you became the first, he will be proud. The next place was a swamp with crocodiles. If outwardly the crocodile looked motionless and the participants calmly walked past on the rocks, then as soon as they passed by, the crocodile grabbed them. The girl walking in front of you became his victim. The guy, using the monkey's stance, snatched the girl from the paws of the animal and pierced his head with a sword, immediately killing. She managed to thank him before one of the students came up to her, warning her about the need to break the talisman. The last wave was an underground cave and you had no idea what it could be, going down to the others. There was a whole pack of devil monkeys waiting for them, who were about to be reborn into a demon. They are strong, but they can still be killed. However, there are so many of them that it becomes bad. It is simply impossible to kill them all. It looks like the last test is a test of dexterity. While you successfully dodged the attack of the monkeys, the 3 strongest participants were ahead of him. He needs to come up with something, otherwise he will be a quarter. There were too many wounded, and one of the monkeys had absorbed the blood Kai and now turned into a demon, standing in the way of the 4 leading participants. Kin Man attacked first, but the demon knocked her aside with a single blow. He was too strong and huge, he could not be killed alone, so the strongest 3 decided to attack all together. No matter how many times the 3 of them attacked the demon, this primate guards the passage and you will not be able to pass. But if they kill the demon, then he will not be the first. He didn't know what to do. The demon used a blood mist that corrodes the flesh. Everyone decided to retreat, because if he touches you, the wounds will start to rot. This was Yu's chance. This mist cannot damage the immortal body of the Vajra. Yu moved forward as soon as the trio stepped aside. He should be the first. The participants had already reached the 3rd test, and the thoughts of all the spectators were busy thinking about who would be the first. It was said that the last test tests the endurance of the participant. This is probably how King Man will win. Her steps can rival the highest martial techniques. At the same time, Juho comes from the wild lands. He knows how to behave with animals. He also has a huge chance. There were also those who thought Zhao Danlong would win. His technique of the 13 swords of the Zhao clan is the most powerful. The Sword of the Mountain of Solitude King Man is a special technique that destroys evil spirits. It can be better than Danlong. There were also those who believed that there was a dark horse among the participants. Grandfather, listening to the conversations, only thought about where the scoundrel had gone. Wu Yu. Suddenly the crowd got up from their seats shouting. Someone came out. He got out first. Wu Yu, whom no one had seen or knew. Su Yanli didn't understand how such a thing was possible if he had barely defeated Zhao Chuan in the forest back then. The newcomer took the first place and it amazed everyone. It looks like this was the one Su Yanli was talking about. He really seemed strong now, even though his age was not great. It seems that all the servants who knew Wu Yu were happy about his victory in the first trial. The guy ran up to the arena waving to his grandfather and causing him tears of happiness. The Celestials soaring in the sky were not so happy. They recognized the weakling who couldn't beat their satiety and didn't know how he was able to get out first. Someone even worried that you would want to take revenge on them for their deeds. Sidu Jin considered him to be just a servant. This Yu could take advantage of the situation and run out first. It is worth waiting until he reaches the arena of elevation. Elder Muti stood up to announce the winner. He was in a hurry to congratulate Wu Yu, who took first place on the path of the immortals. His name will be inscribed in the history of the Heavenly Sword Sexta. The crowd chanted his name. Grandfather was incredibly happy for the guy and his success. The trio of the strongest participants just now ran out of the dungeon and immediately headed towards you with shouts. They shouted that the servant had used them and now he was worthy of their sword in his body. The elder shouted in time that if someone violates the rules of the tournament, he will be immediately disqualified. Zhao Danlong, who attacked you, stopped promising that he would definitely not run away from him in the arena of elevation. You walked right through the blood mist, but if it wasn't for the immortal body. Now that all the 100 participants are gathered, it's time to fight in the arena of elevation. Participants who dropped or damaged the talisman are disqualified. Now there are 30 participants left. Killing people was forbidden. The remaining 30 were invited to enter the arena. The time has finally come and it will be a real massacre. The winner is impossible to predict. Wu Yu made quite a few enemies, so many decided to stay away from him. According to the rules, the participant must get the immortality ball and keep it with him until the candle burns out. After that, you can be considered a winner. Special gifts were prepared for the students who got the ball. The first person to receive the ball is automatically selected. The second is a pill with condensed Kai. and the third is a sword that exorcises evil spirits, the power of which is able to compete with an ordinary catalyst. Each gift had its own mountain of advantages, a condensed Kai pill that only an immortal celestial can make. Even basic students find it difficult to get one. The sword is even better. The catalyst can only be used by immortals. This indicates its power. This time, the gifts were definitely not spared. Elder Muti threw the ball, declaring the test open. The ball flew straight into Yu's hands, but he quickly realized that the battle had just begun, and whoever gets the ball will be surrounded. For now, he should move away and save his strength. As Yu thought, a terrible commotion and a fight over the ball began. He was about to relax when a big man jumped up to him from behind, carrying a scythe over his head and shouting something about how Yu dared to cross Zhao Danlong's road. He is at the 6th level of a hardened body, and if you add more natural strength, then obviously, Yu has an end, but a bright end. Yu was not at all taken aback by surprise. He, using the first style of the wave cutting the wind, knocked the weapon out of the opponent's hands even though he was much stronger than him. The Celestials hovering at the top were surprised again. This Wu Yu defeated a level 6 hardened body so easily. It seems that he is no worse than the Celestials themselves. Sido still resisted this, considering it only child's play, and he himself would have coped with it in 2 or 3 blows. But all the attention from Yu was now returned to Zhao Danlong, who got the ball hiding it in his bosom. After all, he is one of the strongest. Everyone was wondering how long he would last. He was surrounded by many people, and a third of the candle had already burned out. It's too early to say, but maybe he can win. Unexpectedly, the ball was intercepted by the second strongest participant, Yu Ho. Danlong glared at Yu, who was still standing slightly to the side. He believed that the guy was a coward and was just sitting on the sidelines, and when Yu reminded him about the big guy sent, Zhao immediately noticed that Yu was nobody, and Yu had no right to blame him for something either. Yu was right anyway. This test does not tolerate impulsivity, and for Yu, victory is important, not a means. Getting the ball with so many people is extremely difficult. Yu Ho was attacked by King Man, who was hiding behind other people and attacked. King Man also had a chance. She was always patient. There are only about 60 people left, half of whom have already surrendered. Getting a sword is much easier. Perhaps the decisive moment will be when Wu Yu begins to act. Even if you do not take into account his stage, Yu's martial arts are not as perfect as King Man's. The Celestials at this time had already noticed Su Yanli's attention to the servant, and were thinking about many things. Sidu was just angry. He promised that if Wu Yu got the ball today, he would eat his crane's shit. King Man had his own plan. She decided that the others could compete further, and then she would just take the ball away from them. 10 minutes later, both Yu and King Man remained in place. King Man understood that Yu also wanted to get the ball, so obviously he was not doing anything. She smiled at him, saying that they would rely only on their abilities, and rushed forward, snatching the ball from someone else's hands. She looked menacing, warning that if the ball was taken away, she would not stand on ceremony. Then he simply gave up, stepping aside. King Man was considered too strong. If she attacked, then no one would have a chance. For many, the main thing was simply to become a disciple, and not to receive a reward. King Man looked confident when she challenged Yu to a fight. If he really wanted to get the ball, he could try to take it to her. It was the final, and it was coming because only King Man and Wu Yu were left in the arena. No one was really rooting for the guy. Everyone was sure that he had 0 chances in front of King Man. King Man attacked aggressively in the same way as Wu Yu. In strength, the guy was practically not inferior to her. One of the Celestials was already beginning to make fun of satiety, advising his crane to eat less today. Sidu was furious, but it seems that even if such an outcome was not to everyone's liking, this girl could lose. After another attack, the girl dodged to the edge of the arena. She, having hesitated, completely forgot that they were fighting in the arena of elevation and now understood that this was the end. She was falling from the arena. If you leave the arena, you lose. That's the rule. To everyone's surprise, Yu reached out his hand, grabbing King Man and helping her climb back into the arena before she fell completely. He smiled, saying that he wanted to fight again, and King Man only announced his winnings by handing him the ball from his own hands. Despite being so young, King Man already had principles. This bribed Yu. No one expected Wu Yu to be so strong, and even if everyone's favorite King Man was just tired defending the ball, Wu Yu was recognized as not weak at all. Su Yanli won the bet they made with Elder Muti. Wu Yu and him were recognized as strong, even though he liked King Man because of his hardness. At that moment, the candle burned out and it was announced that Wu Yu's servant was receiving a pill and a sword. He is embarking on the path of immortality as an official disciple of the sect from now on. He had finally started his cultivation path, a pill with condensed Kai and a sword that exorcises evil spirits. Such a prince of the Eastern Wu Kingdom did not even dream of. The crowd chanted Wu Yu's name again, and King Man herself bowed, congratulating her on her victory. Yu told her that they could become friends and her age was not important, and she replied that Yu did not seem to be bad. Grandpa in the stands was beside himself with happiness. Now that Wu Yu has become immortal, grandfather's life was definitely not lived in vain. Wu Yu ascended to heaven in one step, took first place and received all the gifts. His future is limitless now. Son Wu Dao himself can now live happily ever after. The Celestials flew away immediately after the announcement of the winner of the competition. No one knew that Wu Yu was so strong. But I just thought that the guy would not be happy for long. He would take care of it. The elder descended to the arena to escort the 30 people who had become official disciples. Yu asked if he could step back and arrange for someone to take his grandfather home. The servants from his peak were already waiting below. They were all glad to win Wu Yu, or as they now called him, Immortal Wu. The cultivation art is waiting for him, and they will make sure that son Wu Dao gets to Yanli Peak. They will still see each other, but in the meantime they will sing songs on the way home about the Immortal Wu. Sidhu watched the servants descend from the arena and swore to himself that he would make Wu Yu want his whole life. 30 new students were led to a peak looking into the heavens where they will now live. Each of them will have a personal palace where there are various books, for example, sect rules and records of the immortal Dingsheng continent, which will help students understand the orders and sects, as well as the ruling forces, territories, the distribution of demons and monsters by region. The outer disciples receive a flying herb of immortals and one talisman every month. The manager will tell them about everything in more detail, but in the meantime, everyone can choose a suitable home for themselves. The elder released everyone except Wu Yu to personally hand the guy a pill with condensed Kai, which can be used when the martial arts reach the completion stage, and the sword exorcising spirits, which is a treasure, which will need to be treated accordingly. Yu, understanding all the elder's words, accepted his gifts. He has finally set foot on the path of immortality, which means that Concubine Zai does not have long to go before her end. In the future, Yu will become a member of the Heavenly Sword sect. He can go and choose a palace for himself. Yu found a not bad palace with servants and a crane. Now he needs to go back to Yanli Peak and ask Su Yanli for a favor. Yu would like Grandpa to spend his last days here. Being a servant and a full-fledged disciple is not the same thing at all. Yu was already swooping down on his crane to Yanli Peak when one of the servants, covered in bruises, began to shout about some kind of trouble. Yu jumped off the bird and rushed forward. The servant shouted to him that the immortal Wu would rather take a look at everything himself. Yu was very scared. Something couldn't happen to Grandpa, just not now. Running into the house, he saw Grandpa's son, who was lying on the floor covered in blood. Tears immediately flowed down the guy's face. He hugged the dead body, screaming. It was Sidhu Jin. He and 3 others met on the servant's way. Sidhu Jin killed Old Man's son and several other servants singing songs. Then Sidhu Jin said that the life of a simple servant is worthless, and Wu Yu, even after becoming immortal, will not be able to do anything to them. Gao Lant and the other servants tried to help by saying a few words, but their tongues were cut off. The servants have already done what they could, and Wu Yu will not let them die in vain now. He will never be able to repay Grandpa's son for his kindness, but he will be able to avenge him. Even if the disciples can't kill each other, otherwise the punishment will be severe. And Immortal Wu has just entered the sect. He'll do it, because if he doesn't punish Sidhu Jin on the same day, he won't consider himself a human being. Sidhu Jin and his entourage were lounging in the student courtyard. Killing the old man calmed them down a little. They knew that the old man was very dear to Wu Yu, but they had nothing to fear, because in their opinion one insignificant servant would not do anything like that with his death. Yu went down, cutting a sigh with himself and breaking stones. Everyone recognized him right away. He was the winner of Wu Yu, but for some reason he was looking for a full Jin, and looked like he was looking for revenge. Sidhu continued to treat the situation simply. Firstly, there are 4 of them, and Yu is one. Secondly, the Heavenly Sword Sexta forbids external disciples to organize massacres. For this, they are expelled or even executed. Everyone only added fuel to the fire by saying that the old man was only translating food and it would be stupid to fly out because of him. But Yu knew that all of them were to blame for his death, so he promised to repay each of them for it in full. Yu did not hesitate to attack. He must have gone crazy for everyone. After all, he decided to attack these students alone, which is stupid considering the strong brothers of Sidhu Jin. The student was complacently determined to deal with Yu on his own. Without 5 minutes, an external disciple, but already so smug, would quickly help him figure out the difference between them. Everything happened quickly. Yu broke his sword with his strength and knocked him to the ground screaming for death. He was going to pierce him with his blade right now, but his friends came to protect the disciple. They attacked Yu, but he was blinded by envy and anger, promising that everyone who stood in his way would be dead. When Yu started killing the attackers one by one, everyone shouted that he had definitely gone crazy. Yu had already heard Sidhu's pleas not to kill him, but Sidhu Jin's older brother, Sidhu Kang, appeared. He has the 7th stage of a hardened body. Obviously Yu has an end, because he is not so proficient. Yu asked him not to interfere and to get out of the way as he does not hold evil against him and does not want to kill. Brother Sidhu was just as selfish, saying that only Yu would die today. Sidhu Kang is really strong. He is 1 stage higher than Yu, but he has twice as much strength. Yu probably won't survive. Yu, receiving blow after blow from a stronger opponent, understood that it was impossible for him to die now. He has just entered the path of immortality and has not yet avenged his father. How can he die? How can he, who was given strength by the great sage himself, die at the hands of an ordinary person? He, indomitable and indestructible, cannot be killed by such as them. The battle blood was supposed to change his body. It was cool because he had only recently taken 1st place on the road of the immortals, and now he had achieved the skill of changing blood. For everyone else, it was definitely a miracle, contrary to heaven. Sidhu continued to shout to his brother about the murder and uncleanness of this student, only making the elder more nervous. Kang rushed into battle, but Yu stopped his blade with his hand. If he stopped the long sword with his hand, then he violated the heavenly law. No one knew what kind of technique it was. Yu crushed Sidhu Kang with 1 blow and he fell to the ground dead. Now the fate of Prince Jin has come and Yu can no longer give him chances. Jin begged for mercy and was jealous of his mistake, but immediately called the murdered grandfather garbage, which did not soften Yu at all. He killed him, realizing that even the death of this scoundrel would not fix it. But now he had avenged his grandfather and wished him to rest in peace. Yu now understood what the path of the immortals was. Fight with heaven and earth, with humans and demons. Judging by this ruthless path, only the strongest can protect their loved ones. Suddenly the people around whispered, looking somewhere in the sky. 3 cranes were descending, and at the head sat Sidhu Minglin himself, the younger brother of Kang and Jin. He is surrounded by a lot of core students, and this monster is on a completely different level. He is a personal disciple of the great immortal, the 10th level of a hardened body. Wu Yu should definitely be doomed this time. Minlin, having descended from the bird, immediately asked the name of the culprit of his appearance. Wu Yu, or the now world-devouring Wu, who killed Minglin's older brothers and will now die a painful death for it. The great immortal, according to Studis, goes right after the great mentor, and since Minlin will soon become her personal disciple, then one external disciple will not be a problem. If there are problems, then the students who arrived with Minlin will take responsibility for them. Such was the strength of the 10th level. Minglin had not yet applied the technique, and Yu could no longer move. There is a big difference between them with a slickshaw, and Yu did not know what to do now. Minglin was going to make Yu pay in full for his crime in front of him. Even if Yu dies today, he won't regret it. The mana effect suddenly stopped and Su Yanli stood in front of Wu. Since Yu is from her peak, no one can take him away, and not even Sidhu Minglin. Minlin was stubborn and insisted on punishing the culprit. He killed 5 outer disciples, including the Minglin brothers. Sister mentor Su will not dare to break the rules. Su Yanli quickly reminded him that only the elders and the grand preceptor can impose punishment, and Sidhu Minglin does not have such a right. Yes, Yu had broken the rules and of course he had to die for it, but Su Yanli had already reported this matter to the great mentor, and he had come here to resolve the situation. The great mentor descended to the courtyard on a huge sword. He already knew about what had happened and did not listen to Minlin. Sidhu Jin brutally killed an infirm old man, which is contrary to the code of cultivators. He doesn't deserve to be a disciple in the Heavenly Sword sect. Sidhu Kang helped this immoral man. He deserved his death. A sword designed to destroy demons was raised on a 100-year-old man. This shames the entire teaching of the Heavenly Sword sect. Wu Yu killed 5 people. Although they were wrong, his methods were too cruel. In this regard, the great mentor sentences Wu Yu to imprisonment for 1 year so that he repents of his mistakes. People were shocked by this decision. He killed 5 people, and he was punished with only 1 year of imprisonment. 1 year in prison. The great mentor protects Wu Yu. At least for another year, Sidhu Minglin won't be able to kill him. According to the decision of the great mentor, in order to distinguish between good and evil, it is worth purifying your heart. This is the only way he can become immortal. Minglin was furious and promised that he would teach him a lesson in a year. Yu, without being embarrassed or scared, replied that maybe in a year he would no longer be a match for Yu. It was strong, but he had reached the 5th level of a hardened body at the age of 15, and Sidhu Minglin was already at his peak at 13. Give him at least 10 years, he still won't win. Laughter, and that's all. The Grand Preceptor ordered Su Yanli to escort Yu to his cell for a peek of reflection. Wu Yu asked them for 7 days for son Wu Dao's funeral because he was a dear person to him, but this request was left without much attention. Su Yanli and Wu Yu flew on a crane heading towards the peak of reflection. The guy thanked her for her help. Now Yu has no time to waste, because in a year they will not be able to protect him. The Great Immortal and the Great Mentor do not get along very well with each other. Sidhu Minglin, too, Yuya will not let go just like that. In any case, 1 year will be quite enough for Yu. The deadline for the funeral of Dushka's son Wu Dao was given, and after it Yu sat at the fresh grave alone. He killed Sidhu Jing and avenged his grandfather. In a year he will visit him again. By that time, he will have changed and will meet his grandfather's expectations. He sat at his grave right up to his feet, and as soon as the grandfather's spirit left, it flew into the air. He and Wu Yu will meet again, because only they are left of his descendants. On this day, at the peak of reflection, Yu settled in shackles in a cell for a whole year. The Great Mentor, before his departure and farewell, said that even if Yu did not reach the formation stage in a year, but at the same time defeated Shu Minglin, he would raise him as the 5th disciple. After that, they left, leaving Yu alone. The guy sincerely thanked the mentor. Yanli was right, Yu has changed a lot, and his spirit has become stronger. The Great Mentor wants to become his mentor. Protecting Yu is his destiny. Wu Yu is really old enough to be his disciple. The disciples of the Great Immortal are getting stronger, and the teacher is probably nervous. But if you look at things honestly, he wouldn't even look at her if she wasn't from there. Sidhu Minglin has reached the formation stage, and it's just an incredible success. He's only 13, and he's already such a monster. It seems that in the future he could surpass the Great Mentor and the Great Immortal. On this day, Sidhu Minglin was now the 5th disciple of the Great Immortal Lan Huian. He promised not to disappoint the Great Immortal from now on and kill Wu Yu in a year. In 1 year, Sidhu Minglin will definitely reach the formation stage and become a core disciple, Yu thought while sitting in solitary confinement. This is the reason why he has to spend every second on training. After reaching the 9th level of the immortal Vajra body, bodies with golden geodes, the holes throughout the body open and glow like golden stars. To conduct fire to them, you need to endure pain while all 100 holes in the body are burning. It just hurts to the point of horror. The immortal body can only be cultivated by people with steel endurance. Exactly 30 days later, all the holes were finally opened. Now Yu's strength is equal to the strength of 800 horses. Not only the 7th level of the hardened body, but also the 8th is now beyond him. But Sidhu Minglin and the Celestial are still too strong, so you just can't relax. It's time to proceed to the next level, visualization of the monkey mind. The 7th level of a hardened body allows you to focus, strengthen your spirit, so that the mind and spirit merge together. This is the key moment to reach the formation stage. Since they are visualizing the monkey's mind, they need to focus on the unsurpassability of the immortal monkey who defeated the Buddha. He is a great sage, equal to heaven, from the heavenly palace, fighting to defeat the Buddha. Yu is destined to receive his knowledge, go against the heavens and destroy the earth. Even this pain from breaking bones won't make Yu give up. He died and was reborn. To get revenge, he has to endure it. The guard assigned to Wu Yu's cell thought he was crazy. His cultivation is nothing but screams and groans. It's fine to try your best, of course, but Sidhu Minglin has already reached the heaven formation stage. Yu doesn't know it yet, otherwise he would be scared to death. 200 days later, Yu reached the 7th level of the hardened body stage. Now there are 1500 horses in it. He is already close to the 10th level of martial arts and will train further. He was interested in how his sister was doing. He had been gone for so long. Meanwhile, a new emperor, Yuan Hao, sat on the throne in the kingdom of Wu. In his speech, he pays tribute to his ancestors and thanks the first emperor, the fallen heroes. Emperor Yuan Hao is so courageous and talented for the townspeople, but not for everyone. Many thought he looked like a girl and said that Crown Prince Yu was a real hero. When the son of Commander-in-Chief Wu did things, he was immediately executed, and Yuan Hao would dare to do such a thing. The Crown Prince has been dead for a long time, but his name is still banned. Concubine Zai stood next to the new Praetor listening to the servants report about what kind of noise there was. Upon learning that the crown prince was mentioned, she ordered them to be dismembered without hesitation and announced to the whole country that anyone who said something about Crown Prince Yu would be killed along with his entire family. Even though today is the day of remembrance of the ancestors, the concubine who has now become the empress was ready to stain him with blood, simply killing the guilty outside the country. Wu Yu's sister is going to be married off to the new emperor of the Eastern Kingdom, the 9th regicide. The hero who appeared on the 38 Eastern Islands united them and founded the Eastern Sea Kingdom. This marriage will benefit the people of the two states, so Wu Yu simply cannot refuse, even if she considers the 9th Kingslayer a monster and will marry him only over her dead body. Uniting with such a ruthless group will bring destruction to their country. She said finally that the gap between Emperor Yuan Hao and Wu Yu is simply colossal. They still had 6 months left, and during that time, Concubine Zai would figure out how to force her to marry according to her own will, while Yuan Hao would think about how to make her life hell. Wu Yu came out of prison. His 1-year sentence, which lasted like a lifetime, was over. His mentor Sister Su met him to congratulate him on his release and hand him the crane along with the Golden Flame technique. Golden Flame Fighting Dragon technique. The mentor gave him this top-level technique because it is a bit similar to the movements of his sword. Saint Minglin has already reached the formation stage for a year. You should be careful. Also, King Man has been looking after his palace all this time, so he can return there at any time. You plan to stay longer with his grandfather and not return to the palace. Su Yanli said that she would order and you would be brought clothes worn by immortals. Since he has become an external disciple, there is no need for him to carry a servant's clothes. The path of the immortals is very long and now you can only count on himself. Su Yanli, already flying away on her crane, said that she was waiting for the day when you would become her mentor brother and you promised not to let down either Su's sister or the great mentor. You returned to Yanli Peak to visit his grandfather's grave. A year has passed, but he has returned and will live with the thought of his dream. He did not hesitate to practice the technique handed down to him by the great mentor. This technique was very suitable for him. That's what it meant when you have a mentor. This technique increases his strength, but according to Sister Su, it will still be hard to fight with Sidu Minglin. To break through to the 8th level of the immortal body, you need 49 days to burn your body, which is quite difficult. Already at night, King Man came to him to challenge Wu Yu. Yu was surprised by this. If they are friends, will they immediately take up arms after the meeting? Many underestimated Yu, but he defeated King Man, so they can't look down on him. It was clear that she just wanted to lose to Yu to raise his prestige. It seems that she takes friendship very seriously. The servants who came with King Man wondered why they needed to fight. King Man is already at the 8th level of a hardened body. Wu Yu will not be able to defeat her. She has mastered 3 drops of green blood. Only the kai of her sword can kill Wu Yu. When King Man was about to attack first, another girl who appeared out of nowhere almost pierced him with her weapon. But King Man repelled her attack in time while taking damage herself. The stranger quickly switched to King Man, intending to kill her, but then Wu Yu arrived in time, who stood up to defend his girlfriend, repelling the stranger's attack.